A group of friends, three 20-something couples, board a party cruise, launching from Long Beach, California, for 3 days of dancing, drinking, and adventure at sea. For one of the couples at least, Ashley and Jeff, it's their first time on a cruise ship. They're all there to celebrate Ashley's 25th birthday. The friends check out their rooms and then head to the casino. Afterwards, the party really gets going as everyone makes their way to the dance floor. Everyone's worries and inhibitions are left at home. Here, everyone's free to be whomever they want to be, without a care in the world. But what happens when the party takes on a life of its own? When things start to get out of control, how do you know who your friends really are? What starts out as the ultimate party on the high seas quickly takes a turn for the worse. This booze-fueled cruise charts a new course, straight to disaster. "24-year-old Ashley Barnett is from Burbank, California, where she lives with her mother, Jamie. Even though her parents are divorced, Ashley's father is still a devoted dad. Ashley has a large, loving, and supportive family with 3 brothers, 2 half-sisters, and 2 stepbrothers. Ashley's mother, Jamie, is proud that her children all get along so well. According to her, they all adore Ashley, and she them. Jamie works at a television studio behind the scenes, running the grip department. When she's 20, Ashley gets a job on the studio lot with her mom. She's hired to be a production assistant on a popular sitcom. This beautiful young woman aspires to be an actress, and working around professional actors is a great step towards her goal. She gets a small role on another sitcom, playing a dancer, and appears in a couple of short films.
Ashley has a lot to look forward to. She's so excited about her promising acting career, and it seems like everything is going really well.
Ashley has recently started dating Jeff Ginsburg, a friend of hers since 9th grade. Although they've known each other for some time, the romantic turn their relationship has taken is new and exciting. She catches the attention of a renowned LA film composer, who hires her as his music coordinator. She works for him for 2 years, leading up to the cruise. Her boss believes in her potential. He sees something special about Ashley and is a supportive mentor and friend. A keen eye for talent, he schedules Ashley an appointment with an agent for when she's back from the cruise. He's sure they'll want to represent her. Ashley has everything going for her and is well on her way to living out her dreams in La La Land. Just days before her 25th birthday, Ashley Barnett leaves for a cruise with friends to celebrate. She's both excited and a little nervous for what the trip has in store. Ashley and Jeff, along with their friends, prepare to board the huge vessel. They are about to embark on a 3-day party cruise with about 2,000 other excited passengers. Described as a combination of a music festival and Burning Man, the friends are anticipating an amazing 3 days of non-stop music, dancing, performance art, and of course, partying. The first-time cruise-goers check out their cabins. While the cabins are nice, the nightclub dance floors are where they plan to spend their time. It's impressive. In addition to the regular cruise ship amenities, this particular festival has artists and performers of all stripes, putting on shows in various parts of the ship. It's everything you could want in a fun-filled escape from reality. As the friends start their evening, they try their luck at the ship's casino. Jeff wins a jackpot.
While casinos are a popular part of entertainment on a cruise ship, they can also cause friction between couples. Usually there's someone who gets really into it and doesn't want to leave, but the other part of the couple just doesn't feel the same way.
They toast to Ashley's birthday and to a great start to their getaway.
Crime and other bad behavior is rampant at many of these music festivals around the world. Alcohol abuse and drug abuse are pretty common, as are theft and even violent brawls.
People in the bar, men and women alike, notice Ashley. She's a striking beauty. The energy of the first night, coupled with the festival's hedonistic atmosphere, has everyone leaving their worries and inhibitions at home. Here on the open waters, everyone is free to be whoever they want to be, without a care in the world. It's a wild scene.
The major issues at these events, however, is the instance of sexual assault. And studies have shown that instances of sexual assault are grossly underreported. I think a very common method of committing a sexual assault at a music festival revolves around drink spiking. And women particularly need to be very careful, and they need to have friends around them looking out for them constantly.
So now it's after 2 a.m. in the morning. The friends are wondering what they should do next. They're still looking forward to going out and having some fun. But Ashley makes it pretty clear that she wants some alone time with her boyfriend. She wants to go back to the cabin with Jeff. So the friends say goodbye, bid them goodnight, but they have no idea that this will be the last time they see Ashley alive.
Around 2 p.m. on the second day of the cruise, the ship's emergency line receives a call from cabin R149.
Jeff phones the nursing station in a panic. He says his girlfriend's not breathing and he needs help. Within 3 minutes, a nurse rushes to the room, and when she arrives, she finds Jeff and an unidentified man hunched over Ashley's dead body.
Six friends embark on a party cruise. Described as a combination of a music festival and Burning Man. The friends are anticipating an amazing 3 days of non-stop music, dancing, performance art, and of course, partying. The friends have a wild first night on the ship, first winning at the casino, then having drinks and dancing the night away at one of the many parties on the ship. It's a great start to Ashley's birthday cruise. At the end of the night, Ashley and Jeff retire to their cabin. The others bid them goodnight. None of them will see Ashley alive again, because the next day, Ashley's lifeless body is discovered in her bed.
When the nurse first arrives, it's a pretty strange scene. You have one man freaking out, obviously very emotionally upset, and then another man who she's not sure of his identity is strangely calm. But she has no time to worry about that right now. Her job is to try and save Ashley's life, and that's what she tries to do.
At 2:12, the ship's doctor arrives on scene and begins examining the body. The nurse communicates that there is no pulse.
Ashley's completely unresponsive, but there's no obvious signs of trauma or injury. There isn't any blood or anything else that would lead the nurse to believe that someone had hurt her intentionally.
The ship's doctor is unable to find a pulse. Jeff appears to be in shock as the doctor pronounces that Ashley has died.
Later that day, the nurse calls Ashley's mother to give her the tragic news that her daughter has passed away. She, of course, wants to know what happened to her daughter, but all she's told is that they don't know and that an investigation is underway.
In Ensenada, Mexico, where the cruise ship is docked, Mexican authorities come on board the ship to investigate and determine if the death was a homicide.
Typically, when there's a death at sea, the ship will employ a temporary morgue for short periods of time, generally no longer than a week. Ships will often have body bags, and staff are trained to deal with deceased persons. But when a ship arrives at port, the Port Authority is allowed to ask to have that body removed from the ship so that they can conduct an investigation.
As they wheel Ashley's body off on a stretcher, Jeff wants to follow, but is told that him and his friends must stay on board the ship until they could be questioned by U.S. authorities. The Mexican authorities, along with ship security and a representative from the cruise line, ask Jeff about what happened. The expression on his face is obvious. He's in shock.
This is the worst case scenario for any mother. You would even say it's a parent's worst nightmare. Something horrible has happened to Jamie's daughter and she can't get any information. She's been calling the cruise line, calling everyone she can think of, and she's unable to get anyone who will talk to her and tell her what happened.
Jamie demands to speak with Jeff, but is told that he is in the process of being questioned. However, later on, she is also informed that he is cleared of questioning, but has declined to speak with her when asked.
Why is Jeff so hesitant to speak to Jamie? You would think that he'd want to talk to his girlfriend's mother and at least let her know what happened. And what did happen to Ashley last night? Is there something suspicious about Jeff's behavior? These are the answers that everyone wants to know. What happened to Ashley the night she died? Unfortunately, there's only one living person who knows what happened during those crucial 12 hours. That's Jeff.
Ashley Barnett, an aspiring actress with a promising career in the film industry, goes on a party cruise to celebrate her 25th birthday. After a night of drinking and dancing, she's found by her boyfriend, Jeff. She isn't breathing. Medical staff come to her aid, but it's too late. She's pronounced dead. To her horror, Ashley's mother, Jamie, is notified by the ship's nurse. She wants to speak with Jeff.
Jamie figures that Jeff has to know what happened. He was the only one in the room with Ashley that night. Why won't he talk about it? What is he hiding from her? Finally, Jeff starts opening up and telling his story to the authorities. This next part is a little sad. Here's Ashley. She's on a birthday cruise. This is supposed to be a great time with her friends and her boyfriend. It's 2:30 a.m. All she wants to do is go to bed with Jeff, and yet he's still too excited to sleep. He wants to go back out to the casino. When he leaves Ashley alone in the room by herself, it's obvious she's a little upset, and he admits there was a bit of a disagreement. Regardless of whether he felt lucky about the casino or regardless of whether he was too excited to sleep, the fact remains that he still left her alone on the first night of her birthday trip. When Jeff returns to the room around 4 a.m., he notices that Ashley is fast asleep. He crawls in bed beside her and falls asleep himself. Jeff doesn't wake up until around noon. Ashley is still fast asleep and he decides he's not going to wake her. He gets dressed as quietly as he can and leaves to meet their friends. Of course, the friends are wondering where she is, but he claims that she's still snoring and that he'll rouse her later.
Unfortunately, Jeff was suspected to be under the influence and had been gambling until late into the morning, so when he wakes up, he very well could have been in a groggy state and sort of focused on himself and not feeling well and wanting to go have lunch with his friends. So that would be the last thing on his mind, was to check to see if his partner beside him was breathing.
At around 2 p.m., Jeff goes back to the cabin and finds Ashley lying there. He tries to wake her up, but there's no response from her. He tries a little harder, but still nothing. He even tries to open her eyelids, and there's still no response. And at this point, he realizes there's something seriously wrong.
An off-duty firefighter is walking down the hall at the exact moment Jeff runs out, screaming for help. He rushes over.
The firefighter starts to perform CPR on Ashley as Jeff calls for more help. The firefighter is the unidentified man that the nurse noticed when she first came into the room.
Firefighters are typically first responders, so they're used to dealing with this type of situation. It wouldn't be something very unusual for him. So as the nurse takes over, he would be able to pass along the information that he had as far as how she was found and when he started CPR. He'd be far more able to provide that information than a distraught boyfriend.
A stunning realization sends Jeff racing to the bathroom to find his bottle of over-the-counter cold medication. He pours the contents of the bottle onto the counter and counts the pills.
At this point, Jeff reappears in the bedroom and gives the nurse some startling news. He says that he had Vicodin and methadone, and some of it is missing.
Methadone is a chemical that's typically given to people to treat opioid addiction. Vicodin, on the other hand, is an opioid, and it's used as a tranquilizer or a painkiller. Vicodin is a commonly abused opiate. It does create euphoric feelings, and it can, in fact, make you unconscious if you use too much of it. Someone who's addicted to Vicodin would likely be prescribed methadone in order to help them with their addiction, but it's a long-term treatment. The authorities at this point have to figure out how the drugs came into play. How did he get them on board? Did he bring them on himself by smuggling them, or did somebody sell them to him on board? Nobody knows.
The ship's security officer checks to see if cabin R-149's locking mechanism can verify some of Jeff's story. It's an electronic lock that tracks passage in and out. However, that particular lock is faulty. They can't verify these details, so they'll have to investigate further.
Meanwhile, Jamie is beside herself, as any mother would be, wondering why she can't get anyone on the phone, wondering why she can't get anyone to answer her questions, and why won't Jeff talk to her?
When someone from the ship calls her back, they tell Jamie that the body has been taken off the ship to be examined by Mexican authorities, but the ship and the remaining friends have left the port.
If someone dies on a cruise ship, you would hope that their loved ones would be able to stay behind with the body. The fact that this isn't the case can seem a bit cold. Definitely Ashley's mother was not happy that her daughter's body was left alone while Jeff went on with the cruise.
The toxicology report did confirm that Ashley took methadone and had alcohol in her system.
The next day, Jeff finally calls Jamie from the security office, but he doesn't want to talk to her too long because there's a bunch of other people around. He's nervous and upset, but Jamie wants answers. She keeps insisting he tell her what happened. Unfortunately, Jeff keeps saying he doesn't know. When he says that some of his drugs are missing and infers that Ashley took them, that doesn't sit well with Ashley's mother. Jamie knows Ashley never would have taken those drugs.
Jamie is frustrated, but she learns the FBI will be stepping in once the ship returns to harbor in Long Beach. She is told to be there when it arrives. She has some semblance of relief, knowing the FBI should be able to get to the bottom of this tragic incident.
It was really difficult for Jamie to be on the ship where her daughter died, but she needed to be there. She needed to do this interview with the FBI, and she was looking forward to getting some answers.
Ashley Barnett is found dead in her cabin by her boyfriend, Jeff. The ship's medical staff race to see if they can save her. However, time is not on their side, and she's pronounced dead. Miles away, Jamie Barnett, Ashley's mother, yearns for answers, but doesn't get them. Why won't Jeff talk to her? Suspecting how this might have happened, Jeff takes stock of his methadone and Vicodin, powerful opioid drugs that he had stashed in a bottle of over-the-counter cold medicine. Some of it is missing. At the Mexican morgue, it is discovered that Ashley had alcohol and methadone in her system. Authorities question Jeff, who tells his side of the story. But they have more questions for him. How did he get the drugs?
Where could Jeff have gotten the drugs from?
Jeff admits that he's had problems with drugs in the past. Even though Ashley knew about his addiction to Vicodin, she thought that she could get him through it with her love and support. She honestly believes that he's a good person and that once he gets beyond his addiction, they'll be able to have a healthy relationship. Ashley confided in one of her friends that she thought with her love and support, she could help Jeff get over his addiction. She even told her mother, and her mother knew that Ashley was really proud of Jeff for overcoming his addiction to Vicodin.
But there's another possibility as well. In the ship's incident report that day, it says that Jeff has given a statement that 3 weeks before the cruise, Ashley had an abortion.
Getting an abortion is a big decision, and it's not something that women go into lightly. It can be pretty traumatic for women, and they may need some time to recover, both emotionally and physically. Ashley's boyfriend and her mother do not agree on these details at all. Jeff claims that Ashley tried to overdose on painkillers, but Jamie says that never happened. Jeff also said that Ashley was severely depressed after her abortion, but her mother said it was just an appropriate amount of sadness for a decision that her daughter did not take lightly.
At some point, Jeff sits with Ashley to have a heartfelt talk. He admits to her that he has relapsed into his Vicodin addiction, but that he wants to try and kick the habit once again. They talk about the upcoming cruise they had planned with their friends and how it would be a good way to celebrate her upcoming 25th birthday and a chance to get away from the stresses of life and for him to detox.
The question for me is, if you're trying to get off a Vicodin addiction, why would you go on a 3-day party cruise? Sort of sets yourself up for failure, particularly because he brought both of those drugs on board with him. Cruise ship security is perhaps not quite as strict as what you would find at an airport. However, bags do still go through X-ray machines to look for weapons or drugs or alcohol, which is prohibited on board. We have real camera footage showing Jeff boasting about getting past ship security. And this is a problem because here we have a guy telling the FBI that he's on board the ship to detox, but then he's boasting about carrying drugs on board with him. An addictive personality can display obsessive-compulsive behavior. They can seem genuine, but also mislead people to get what they want. One of Ashley's good friends suspects that someone might have slipped something into her drink. However, the toxicology report showed that there was nothing in her system other than alcohol and methadone, so that theory can be ruled out.
If Jeff had carried on his Vicodin addiction to the point that he was bringing the drug on the cruise with him, and he thought he could keep that secret from Ashley, right there, that's potential for conflict. That's going to create a barrier between them that's going to be really hard to overcome.
Were there other reasons why Jeff wanted to go back out? Was he high? Did Ashley sense that? In her fragile emotional state, would she have tried to harm herself by taking Jeff's drugs? Jeff Ginsburg, the boyfriend of Ashley Barnett and the one who discovers her dead, has brought drugs on board the cruise ship. Drugs that are found in her body. He explains to authorities the events leading up to Ashley's death, but they cannot all be proven or disproven. Ashley has had an abortion previous to the trip and was supposedly depressed, allegedly having once tried to overdose on painkillers. Jeff's addiction to Vicodin is an issue in their relationship and may have been a factor in her emotional stability that night. Is it a possibility that Ashley might have taken the pills intentionally? Friends and family all affirm that Ashley was adamantly against drug use.
According to her mother, she'd even written an anti-drug rap song.
Jamie reveals that Ashley had a cold before the trip and brings up the possibility that perhaps she had taken the pills not knowing what they were.
She had cold symptoms prior to starting her holiday on the cruise ship. Is it possible that when Ashley went back to her room, that she went inside and into that suite to take a cold medication tablet before she went to bed? The question is, does a methadone, a Vicodin, and a cold medication tablet all have the same shape and size? It's very possible.
Yet, Jeff maintains that she did indeed know about the drugs stashed in the pill bottle. That she was with him and watched him put them in the bottle. From his perspective, it was the abortion that made her depressed and want to harm herself.
Trying to predict if someone is suicidal is very difficult. Sometimes the signs are there, very obvious, but other times it's very small indicators that are often missed. You just need to really pay attention.
Ashley's boss tells news sources that just a couple days before the cruise, she doesn't seem depressed at all. Rather, she seems optimistic about the future. He describes how Ashley was special, that she was beautiful both on the inside and out, and that she had star potential. Yet, another perspective into Ashley's personality comes from Jeff's mother, who describes her as someone very dramatic. When asked what that means in this situation, Jeff's mother insinuates that Ashley might have intentionally taken the drugs to harm herself, just to scare Jeff. To scare him into not leaving her alone.
We have two very different stories here. Two people who knew Ashley well, who paint a very different picture of who she was. On one hand, we have Jeff, who may be trying to hide something, saying that Ashley was very despondent, that she was in exactly the type of mind frame to overdose on their cruise. And on the other hand, we have her mother, who would never believe that Ashley would take drugs or want to take her own life. So it's really a question of who we believe in this case.
When the FBI finally interview Jamie, they ask many questions, but answer relatively few of hers. In the end, she gets frustratingly little information about what they've uncovered. When Ashley's body is finally returned to the U.S., the Barnett family hires a private pathologist to do an autopsy. Their hope is that it will reveal more clues into how she died and why.
Although an autopsy was already performed in Mexico, Ashley's parents asked to have one done in the U.S.
As a former investigator, I have experience where families have had more than one autopsy on their loved one. As a family member, you would be very reluctant to believe that your 25-year-old healthy daughter, who has never taken drugs in her life, has died of a methadone and alcohol overdose.
Ashley Barnett, 25, dies of a methadone overdose. How the drug ended up in her system is a mystery. There are theories that perhaps she was drugged, or that perhaps she took the drugs by accident. Her boyfriend Jeff claims that she knew his drugs were stashed in the bottle of over-the-counter cold medication. But did she? Did she remember in that moment? Ashley's mother, Jamie, finds it difficult to get straight answers, making this nightmare situation that much harder to deal with. Jamie wonders who, other than Jeff, would have given Ashley the drugs, and asserts that her daughter would never have taken them of her own volition.
In the end, there was no evidence to suggest that there was anyone other than Jeff and Ashley in their cabin that night. The American doctor hired to perform the autopsy found no sign of regular drug use.
The autopsies performed in Mexico and the States both confirmed the same results. the toxic effects of methadone are responsible for Ashley's death.
Jeff denies giving her the drug, so the only unknown factor is whether she took it herself, intentionally or by accident.
Let us remember that Ashley was on her way to having a very successful acting career. She was happy. She was on a birthday cruise. She had so much to live for. She thought her boyfriend had overcome his addiction. Why would she have killed herself? It doesn't make any sense.
In the end, Jeff and Jamie both believe that the medical attention Ashley receives is insufficient. When Ashley is discovered unresponsive, CPR is applied by an off-duty firefighter and the ship's nurse. But over 30 minutes pass without a successful attempt at resuscitation. The cruise line maintains they did everything they could, and that additional measures would not have helped because Ashley was already dead by the time medical staff were notified. Jeff disagrees, saying that she was still warm when he realized something was wrong.
As much as we want to blame Jeff for bringing the drugs on board the ship, there doesn't seem to be any motivation for him wanting to hurt Ashley.
Jeff tells a reporter afterwards that when it's all said and done, he doesn't know what happened, and that it's something he has to come to accept, that he'll never know, haunting him for the rest of his life.